Every religious discipline is rich with metaphor. The characters that make up these religions, they hold so much spiritual truth. To the flip side, they are open to so much interpretation. Interpretation that takes us squarely in the direction of misinterpretation. And this could be no more true for religion than it is for Christianity. To simplify your understanding of Christ and Lucifer, I need you to see both Christ and Lucifer as a unit or a stream of consciousness. I need you to see them as a consciousness split or polarity within the universe, rather than a being or person. Therefore, Jesus is not Christ. Rather, Jesus, the person, is the channel or vessel for Christ consciousness to express itself in the physical. And the same is true if a person becomes the vessel for Luciferian consciousness. Simply put, Christ consciousness is two primary things. The first is love, and the second is free will, otherwise known as choice. If you put these two things together, Christ consciousness is purely the choice to love. Luciferian consciousness is determinism, and it is separation. Because Christ consciousness is love, it is unity. Because Luciferian consciousness is separation, it is selfhood. What does this mean? It means that Lucifer is the consciousness of the ego, whereas Christ consciousness is that which is beyond the ego. The actual story of Christ and Lucifer, or Jesus and Satan, is the same as the story of Buddha and Mara in Buddhism, the exact same characters in two different cultures. Mara represents the ego, and Buddha the consciousness that is beyond the ego. To understand more about this consciousness that is beyond ego, watch my video titled Oneness is Not the Ultimate Truth of This Universe. The ego is one of the biggest topics in spirituality. Nearly every teacher who was a spiritual teacher throughout history has talked about the ego. But what exactly is the ego? The ego is self-concept. It is I, me, mine. It is all the things you identify with. It is usually considered to be the barrier to awakening and enlightenment, or the barrier to heaven, depending on which culture you grew up in. For more information about this, watch my video titled Self-Concept, the Enemy of Awakening. For this reason, for thousands upon thousands of years, spiritual practice has been aimed at one thing and one thing primarily, and that is to overcome and transcend the ego. It is to defeat the ego, otherwise known as defeating Mara or defeating Lucifer. But here's the thing. All this is coming to a halt, because it must. There is much talk in Christian circles about the many disguises of Satan, in the same way that there are many talks being given in Buddhist circles about the many disguises of Mara. But one thing we're going to have to accept is that the ultimate disguise of Lucifer is the singular Christ. If someone says, I am Christ, they are in fact in Luciferian consciousness. This is because Christ consciousness is love. To love is to take something as part of oneself. To learn more about this, watch my video titled, What is Love? Christ consciousness, therefore, is to take all things as part of oneself and to do so with your free will. This is why Jesus embraced the lepers as part of himself, for example. If Christ recognizes itself in and of all things in existence, it can no longer recognize itself as a singularity. It would recognize itself, and Christ therefore, in a piece of bread, in an animal, and in every other person on the street. To say, I am Christ, is to separate. It is to be in perfect alignment with Luciferian consciousness, and completely in alignment with the ego. Basically, to say I am Christ is Luciferian consciousness in the disguise of Christ. Christ consciousness is to take all things as part of oneself with one's free will. No exceptions. No exceptions to the rule. What does this mean? It means that the ultimate act of Christ is to take Lucifer as itself. To genuinely choose love is to no longer recognize polarity or splits within oneself. It is to no longer recognize the separation within this universe. It is for Christ to recognize itself in all things, including what it sees as its opposite polarity. Ready for the catch? If a person does this with the attitude that they are such a good person for doing so, they're back in ego consciousness. If Christ consciousness feels as if it is good for loving Luciferian consciousness, it is automatically not Christ consciousness, but Luciferian consciousness again. Now, most people walking the planet today are terrified of Luciferian consciousness. I find this particularly amusing because nearly all people walking the planet today are operating from Luciferian consciousness. Why? Because nearly everyone on the planet today is operating from ego. Not beyond it, not including it, from ego. And, therefore, they perceive themselves to be separate. Nearly all people walking the planet today also function in direct alignment with determinism. They are not living in a space of free will, so they are in Luciferian consciousness. For example, if you experienced a loss in your childhood and as a result automatically put a wall up to becoming attached to someone, you're operating from a place of determinism and therefore Luciferian consciousness. Doesn't seem so evil anymore, does it? And guess what? The people who call themselves Christian or Buddhist or spiritual are often operating from Luciferian consciousness the very most. This is because they are waging an active war against Luciferian consciousness, and by doing so, aligning perfectly with it. This is why there is a saying, no one can hate and exclude like a Christian. This is why, in the name of oneness, so many Buddhists have denied, suppressed, and disowned so many parts of themselves. This is why spiritual people keep falling into the trap of having such intense egos about being egoless. The spiritual field, which includes religion, is the place where the most dangerous egos exist, and it is the place where the ego takes the most brilliant disguises. For more information about this, watch my video titled The Sad Truth About Most Gurus. What is the lesson that we need to learn here? What is the true lesson of Buddha and Mara, of Christ and Lucifer? The true lesson is to integrate your ego. It is not to defeat your ego. It is not to transcend or overcome the ego. It is to integrate your ego. To integrate your ego, you are going to have to own it as yourself. It is part of you, and it's not something that is ever going to not be part of you, whether you want it to not be or whether you're okay with it. It's the reality. You must see it, hear it, feel it, and come to understand your ego so that you can meet its needs and care for its best interests. The opposite of what we have been trying to do for thousands of years. Doing this is the only way that we can bridge this gap of separation or perceptual separation that exists between the self and that which exists even beyond oneness. Integration is the true desire and mission of that which we call God, Source, or the universe. For more information about this, watch my video titled Integration, the True Mission of God. The rejection, suppression, denial, and disowning of the ego puts the ego in a very dangerous position. This is why you have the negative association you have with ego. When that is the attitude we are taking to the ego has no other choice than any other part that we're suppressing, denying, and disowning has. And that is to get its needs met in roundabout ways. Its only choice is to manipulate in order to get its needs met, to take on disguises in order to get its needs met. This includes its most terrifying disguise, the ego in the form of the transcendental self. A transcendental self that is, of course, every bit as much concerned with the goodness of being that transcendent and the superiority of being that transcendent as any other aspect of the ego. All you need to do to recognize this form that the ego takes in order to manipulate to get its needs met because we are denying, suppressing, and disowning it is to go to a New Age or spiritual gathering. Again, tempting to think that manipulation is evil. It really isn't. Manipulation is nothing more than something trying to get its needs met in an indirect way because it doesn't believe it can get them in a direct way. And yes, that causes massive amounts of suffering, but it doesn't make it evil. For more information about this, watch my video titled Meet Your Needs. We need to own our ego and actually develop intimacy with our ego so as to make it so much a part of ourselves that it cannot express itself a way that is detrimental to us or the universe at large. And we need to do this to end this war of polarity that is taking place within this universe. If we are going to say that we align with Christ consciousness, we need to practice choosing to love. We need to love that which is Luciferian in consciousness. This is the hardest practice of all. And it cannot be done so as to see ourselves as good. It must be done because we are sick of suffering. Because from a space of love, we would not wish suffering or separation and determinism on our worst enemy. In fact, we cannot wish it on them, because wishing it on them is to wish it on ourselves, because we are them. What I am asking you to do today is to actually get the lesson of Christ and Lucifer, which is to stop waging war with your ego, to integrate it instead. The ego is a necessary part of awakening. Awakening cannot happen without ego. The enlightenment of Buddha cannot happen without Mara, and Lucifer is not separate from Christ consciousness. It is simply the part of Christ consciousness that sees itself as separate and continues to be treated as such because of it. The ego comes with many gifts. Gifts you will never see if you stay in the rejection, or denying, or disowning of it. Commit today to the ultimate practice that both the Buddha and the Christ were trying to convey before the people who were trying to understand their teachings but couldn't, distorted their message. And that message was this: stop trying to wage war with, deny, suppress, disown, transcend, or overcome, or defeat your ego. Instead, integrate it. Have a good week.